the students, through this pilgrimage to that place and through the testimonies that are given by Australian Holocaust survivors, reconjure what happened. They're carried back and transported to this place of death, and they bear witnesses in a very different way, not as direct witnesses to the events that can never and should never be repeated, but they become guardians of a memory to ensure that it will never happen again.
Don't you know that I'll be around to guide you through your weakest moments, to leave them behind, turning nightmares, only shadows. Cast some light, it'll be alright. Cast some light, it'll be alright. Crosses along, heavy on the shoulders. Sirens inside you, waiting to step forward. Disturbing silence, darkens inside. Cast some light and you'll be alright. Cast some light. Crosses along, crosses along, crosses along, crosses along.
Please do yourselves, your families, your schools, and our community proud. And let's all have the most wonderful, wonderful time.
Not all of the grandparents have told their grandchildren what happened during the Shoah. Sometimes they like to protect their children and grandchildren and don't want to say anything. But after the students have been on March of the Living and come back, it's almost as if those doors are opened and the grandparents start to unlock those stories that they have kept hidden for so many years, because they realise that their grandchildren are the witnesses to the future. And for me, that is one of the most amazing things about March of the Living.
Nightingale, sing us a song of a love that once belonged. Nightingale, tell
We're here in Warsaw.
was your journey far too long? Does it seem like I'm looking for an answer to a question I can't ask?
In front of you, behind me, is
I don't know
33
which
hectares
way
of land, full of over 250,000
I should
graves.
blow it to
The street unrolled like a carpet as the barefoot children walked past, singing, "We're going, and not alone, to the fields, the green fields at last. The doctor is with us,
of a
we'll not
love
leave you
that
too. We're going
once
together, and
belonged.
we know he'll go with us. With us
Nightingale,
now and forever."
tell me your tale. Was your journey far too long? All the voices that are spinning around me, trying to tell me what to say. So can I fly right behind you? You can take me away.
I did not know it was buried beneath the grass.
had sewed up for all week. They would not spare.
You have to understand, if they were caught, it was immediate death. Both for the Jews and the Gentiles were part of the operation. Everyone, whoever they could catch.
All the voices that are spinning around me, trying to tell me what to say.
We're 18, the number of the apartment was, and the bunker.
Wir Paroso gehen das Lied von Tor zu Tor.
Na heute versammeln wird die Sonne in den Kajor.
Wir Paroso gehen das Lied von Tor zu Tor. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und mit.
We sing the song, as you probably know, at every Shoah commemoration. And it became a song which really proves that we didn't go like sheep. Wherever possible, we were fighting back.
And it finishes with the words, Wir seien da, we are here.
You can take me away.
Dear mother, do not wait up for me. I will return no more to you. My voice will not be heard from afar.
Only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here, in the ghetto.
Before I left, I kind of took the generation of survivors a little bit for granted, and I was always interested in hearing their stories, but it never really spoke to me as much, as it did once I'd come back. It really made me realise how important they are and how important their stories are, and how much responsibility we have to, make sure that their stories are never lost.
I've got such a further insight into what our ancestors went through, as opposed to always seeing it in textbooks and hearing about it. Being there is so different.
Because I was only 1 day old when I was born here in this house, where that blonde woman is looking out in this room that I talked to her mother last year. 26th of June 1925, I was born in this room here in this building. I remember my mother saying, children, we're living in such a miserable time. One thing don't forget, as long as you have your bed, your quilt, and your chair, you're still a human being. Once that will be taken away, that will be the end of us, and how right she was. And I'm now 81 years old, and what can I ask God? That I lived through such a Gehenna. I lived through the war. I have 2 sons and 6 grandchildren, and one of my grandsons is a pilot in Qantas. What more can I ask in life?
This is where Abuba, Esther left me was born and raised. This is where she grew up, and this is where she played.
Mama, she would always be positive in the ghetto. She always used to tell us, tomorrow will be a better day. That was until Tadashi died of pleurisy in 1942. Only 6 weeks later, my younger sister Hannah died of a broken heart. She could not go on without her beloved father.
Abuba is living in Australia now. She's surrounded by family. Although she'll never have her immediate family back, her hope and courage has brought us into the world. We are her family. Family not to replace, but to have and live with. She will always have us, and we will always have her.
In 1940, his family was moved into the Lodge Ghetto, alongside with all of the other Jews from the community. And then in 1944, they were sent to Auschwitz. Once arrived in Auschwitz, the process of selection began. Maizada's mother and little brother were sent to one side, while he, his father, and younger brother were sent to the other side.
Maizada said that he survived only by luck and wanted to tell his story so that his children and grandchildren would know where he was from and what had happened to him.
I want to talk briefly about the head of the Judenrat in Lodz, and we've mentioned him already. When we were back at the park...
Deportations from other countries, from Vienna, Germany. A lot of people were brought here.
In my old age, I am forced to stretch out my hands and to beg. Brothers and sisters, give them to me. Fathers and mothers, give me your children.
Because systematically they took from house to house, from factory to factory, people right here to Radegos. And from here to an unknown destination, and we finally arrived 4 days later in Auschwitz.
By the time you reach your goal, tongues will be twisted to the point where you lose track of yourself. Distorted pictures, it's all you ever. Distorted pictures, it's all you ever. Distorted pictures is all you ever. Distorted pictures is all you ever. Distorted pictures is all you ever.
It takes one person to make a difference in somebody's life. It takes one small act, and the ripple effect can be huge. Imagine if your grandparents had gone right rather than left. One small choice or decision, and maybe you would not be here today.
Who's never been allowed to play outside, to laugh and sing out. Who all day long, locked up in a somber room, dreamt of a crumb of bread and starved to death.
Although she's not alive today, when she passed away, our home seemed to be full of butterflies. Whenever we see a large black butterfly, which is quite often, we think about Nanny, a lady who was able to remain beautiful in spite of the torment in her life, and who allowed her children to spread their wings and achieve the life that she had always dreamed for them.
So kommens von dein Weg, das Päckl in der Hand, das Haus in Aschenbrand. Wir lassen sich mein Kind suchen Glück. Die Welt hat Gott vermacht und es nach. Sie wart auf uns, mit Scheuderin, mit Schreck. Wir stehen beide durch.
But today, me and my cousin Vanessa found our great-great-grandmother's grave in the Lodge Cemetery, which was really exciting. So we went to go and visit it, and we have photos of it from years ago when our great uncle went there. So now we got to take our own photos and we put stones on it for our grandmother and for us, and we cleaned the grave. And yeah, it was really nice seeing it, and it was really nice.
At the Radegast railway station, I was just walking through, I went into the museum and I looked at the names on the lists, and I recognise some of the surnames as my family names, and like even if they weren't actually related to me, it gave me this amazing connection that I just couldn't handle. It was a huge connection and a huge moment for me.
I was fortunate enough to be in the cattle cart when the Israelis came in, and was standing there for a while with Rabs, and just really emotional. And it was really incredible to stand there and listen to one of the survivors speak in Hebrew about his experiences and about how he was actually in one of these cattle carts and was taken to one of the camps. It was just unbelievable.
Take this group 1 and your wombat. That's number 4. Kangaroo. Zero kangaroo. Okay, hot one.
על הקן סרט שפוך בחלום צמרת עץ פורח והשקט חזר רואים לפי החיים שערה הייתה הנה חלפה לה אופניים שוב
The Nazis threw out the building, the large Talmudic library, and brought it to the market. There, a fire kindled under the books. The flames lasted 20 hours.
The congestion, the stench, the poverty, the disease, and the chaos which reign in Lublin cannot be paralleled. The last, the very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears would sing against a white stone.
They dragged the Jews out of their homes with the help of young Poles who aggressively beat us and shouting at us to get onto the street. Trucks were waiting on the street and the Jewish men were taken away to work.
Rabbi Chaim Kreisworth was my grandfather's cousin. He was born in Voynich, Poland, where their families shared a half house together.
I remember on the bus on the way there, everybody was quite cheery. I think it was Miss Prince. She got on the microphone and said, "We're only minutes away, so if everybody could just quiet down and think about where we're about to go."
And then I actually looked out on my right through the window and I saw my Danik.
And there was just dead silence.
Went silent.
For minutes.
The wire fences, the buildings, the barracks.
It was there and it was real.
It's just, you can't understand how this could have happened.
And from then on, the mood had just changed for almost the whole day.
כשהלב בוכה, רק אלוהים שומע. הכאב עולה מתוך הנשמה. אדם נופל לפני שהוא שוקע. בתפילה קטנה חותכת הדממה. שמע ישראל אלוהי, אתה כל יכול.
נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוהי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוהי, עושה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח. עושה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי כוח. כשהלב בוכה, הזמן עומד מלכת. האדם רואה את כל חייו פתאום. אל הלא נודע, הוא לא רוצה ללכת. לאלוהיו קורא על סף תהום. שמע ישראל אלוהי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוהי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוהי, עושה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח. עושה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי כוח.
They took us from Plaszow first to Birkenau. We stayed there a day and a half. For some reason, they asked us to get back into the cars, cattle cars, and we went to Mauthausen.
שמע ישראל אלוהי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוהי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוהי, עושה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח. עושה שיגמר, כי לא נותר בי כוח.
A million pairs of shoes, lie and think. A million pairs of shoes, surviving shoes, clambering, stirring, groping towards the sky.
The unborn boy waits up in heaven for his parents that will never come, for his journey that is lost forever.
How can one find any words to describe it? We have to fight for everything in my tonic. A scrap of floor space in the hut on which to stretch out at night.
A woolen jumper, a thread, a mother, a daughter, a son, a friend, a family, a father.
We stand here today on the 15th day of April 2007, and I was born on this day 16 years ago. What real significance does this day have? How can I celebrate when on this day, in this very place, just 62 years ago, thousands of people were being murdered? Dates connect us. They connect us to those who live and those who have lived before us. So how am I going to celebrate my birthday today? I lit a candle to commemorate those who were lost, and to celebrate those who have lived.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
When I was 13 years old, I was in Auschwitz, Birkenau. I lost my family the first 5 minutes I was there. Before we left the ghetto, my mother put diamonds in my skirt, and she said, if we work in separate places and you get hungry, you take the diamonds and buy bread. There was no bread to buy for diamonds. They carried a stronger love and sacrifice of my mother than the Nazi hatred. So I could not throw them away. And I kept swallowing them and retreat them all through my incarcerated time. I love you so much for just being here and just be the most strongest witness to the witness that when I am gone, you are my witness.
That could have been my Annie, and when she says witness to the witness, I suppose I'm there, and it's like the biggest gift that I could see her and I could see the survivors that went with us.
Our visit to Majdanek, that I'm sure, like many other participants on the march, just was the most horrific and amazing experience ever.
Even though it's one of the scariest things to watch a survivor, especially walking around those places and to sometimes ask them those personal questions, it's so important for us to talk to them because, you know, realistically they're gone in a few years. Well, not a few, but they're gone. And then it's my job and my parents' job and my children's job to keep making sure that those stories stay alive, even though the people who own them aren't around anymore.
Do you ever look around? Turn your ear to the ground, show your face to the sky on a night when the skies echo sounds from inside of your mind on the stage that you shone where the sun would become you in. And move with your thoughts to the sights and the scenes of the worlds you have seen and the sights that have been your reflection in shadows and dreams. Your reflection in shadows and dreams. Did you ever see a man who did walk down the street, white robe with no shoes on his feet, and on top of his head place a box with 2 slits, and the sign from his neck said, I do not exist. Or a woman who could not remember her name, did stutter and stutter again and again, and saw you and called you her son, her eyes said, my being is gone, but still I'm not dead.
My grandmother, Eva Slonim, and that is her sister Martha, and they were brought here to Auschwitz when my grandmother was 13 and her sister was 11. And they looked very similar, even though my grandmother was 2 years older than her sister. So they were placed in the twin barracks and they were experimented on by Dr. Mengele. I've seen this photo so many times before at home. We've got it framed, the one at my house, and my grandmother's written a message on the bottom. She wrote kind of her lesson to the world and her message to everyone. But seeing here where it took place and how, and especially the size, it's just so overwhelming.
Marching with my dad, both of us not talking, like thoughts running through our heads, and just being able to be there with each other.
I felt close to Judaism. 8,000 Jewish people walking down streets all together.
And there was like this tail of Israeli flags and of Jewish people just like surrounding the streets.
It's my family, it's my history, and so that going through the march and then ending in Birkenau was amazing.
Put it all in the inside of the jacket, just open it.
Janie, how are you?
You can surf it up.
Where can you go extra?
Not to save you, but to keep on looking and we said it, we said it, we said it, we said it, we said
Have you ever been so happy that you said that the lights turn to stars and the stars become eyes and the lows are goodbyes and the laughs are the sighs and the show disappears with a note until next time. Long live living, if living can be this. Long live living, if living can be this.
My dad suddenly broke down, and like, you know, whenever you see an adult crying, especially if it's your close, like your dad, you're gonna have to cry, you're gonna have to break down because you realise what's going on here.
The whole bit of Poland was the March of the Living.
This is where my buba got separated from her mum and never saw her again.
Our mission, just as youth and as a generation, is to find a way where we can say, I'm bearing witness to the witness, and I'm remembering and perpetuating the memory of all those people who were murdered.
Today, the 28th day of Nisan, Yom HaShoah ve'Gvura, we commence this Holocaust Day Remembrance Day ceremony here amid the ruins of Auschwitz-Birkenau.
We are here today to remind those who wish to forget and those who dare to deny that on the path we walked less than an hour ago and on similar paths across Europe, the greatest crime in human history was carried out.
Why? Why? Lama?
What did we do? What was our crime? Is our blood in a different color than yours? The numbers of the organs in our bodies is not the same as yours?
My name is Tobias Lipson. I live in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm traveling with the Australian and New Zealand delegation. I have two numbers in my life that I will always remember. One number is 10,378, B, Auschwitz, Birkenau. The second number is KUV 13578, an officer in the Israeli army. And those two numbers I remember all my life. I arrived here the 20th of August 1944 with my father, my mother, my sister and myself here on this platform. They separated me from my mother and my sister, and I stood with my father. I recited Kaddish in the memory of my father, Yaakov Nachum ben Yosef Eliezer, mother Malka bat Chaim David, sister Carola bat Yaakov Nachum, uncles, aunties, cousins, friends, and 6 million men, women, and children had perished in the Holocaust.
בעולמו דיברו חירוסי, בימליך מלכוסי, בחייכון ויומכון, ובחיי דכל בייס ישראל, בעגלו ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבו מן שמעיו, עושה שלום בברונו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
I felt a really strong feeling of unity that day when we sort of all stood up together, arm in arm. We were sort of like all the other countries. They looked back and they saw us all arm in arm that day, and they were sort of a bit shocked, and they were thinking, what's going on there? And to see all 120 of us just, you know, arm in arm, singing Hatikva, it was definitely something I gained a lot out of.
His courage, his strength, his faith in God, his unfathomable will to survive. It is all of this that makes him my inspiration, my hero.
I was born on 3rd May 1926. I went to a Hebrew school. I had a lovely childhood, up and down, but very nice childhood. I was bar mitzvah in May before the war broke out. And that's where the trouble started. I arrived in Birkenau on the 1st of August 1944 at age of 18. Now, my first memory of this place was the noise and commotion. The airs were screaming, Juden raus, the dogs were barking, and we were being herded with whips left, right. We could smell the terrible stench of the bodies burning. It was at night, and we could see the fire coming out of the chimney. I have 4 children, 11 grandchildren, who together with all of you have the responsibility to carry the memories of the past as you strive towards a confident future.
Today we marched from Auschwitz to Birkenau, retracing steps, reliving lives. Although the journey itself was short, it will continue forever in our hearts. When Steve and I first heard about these opportunities to give a testimony, we came to the realization that neither of us have an immediate connection to the Holocaust. We decided to write this song.
Your tears I see you march into eternity. It's only a moment, got lost in time. I wish I could find what...
Taking the final step towards our freedom. We stand here for 6 million who never got the chance to stand here themselves. Together we stand to honor the past, live in the present, and to explore the future.
To dear Anya, whose life was so long, yet so sad by her losses, and to her parents and sister, who were described as angels before their time. May you all rest in peace together in heaven, and not what was your hell here in Auschwitz.
My dad was a Holocaust survivor. My mother says he never told his stories. When asked why once, he replied, "I don't have the words." His eyes spoke of unfathomable pain, unbearable memories. She never asked again.
I only have to attempt comprehension of trauma, but you had to experience it. I only knew you for 14 years, but you taught me the knowledge to last a lifetime. Your actions have defined you as a hero, my grandfather.
Your number is called. All must wait because one person is not present. 15 minutes later, the body is dragged into place. Even the dead must report.
But this is no cemetery. They have no cemetery. They did not even have a cemetery. We are their cemetery.
They are aunties and uncles, grandparents and friends. They were irreplaceable lives whose ashes lie beneath our feet, but whose souls will linger in our hearts forever.
My family's connection with the Holocaust comes via Germany rather than Poland. However, it is here at Auschwitz-Birkenau that many German Jews were exterminated, together with Jews from all over the world.
As we exchange smiles from here to Australia, I realise that it is for you I do this. So blessed be your memory, for it has now been shared, and today, as I promise you with all my heart, I shall safeguard it.
Standing in silence, not a whisper could my Zeta speak. 14 years of age, unable to move, inert, completely weak. 60 years has gone by and my Zeta has daughters and grandchildren, whom which he has a very strong connection. I love my Zeta very much and often see myself through him as a reflection.
Consider if this is a man who works in the mud, who does not know peace, who fights for a scrap of bread.
How do you describe it? What alphabet do you employ? What words? What language? What silence? What scream?
Never shall I forget those moments which murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to dust. Never shall I forget these things, even if I am condemned to live as long as God himself. Never.
Kazimierz and the nearby Wieliczka salt mine was put to the first list of UNESCO World Heritage 1978.
As the river tanzt, as the river tanzt, tanzt the city.
most beautiful shuls I've ever seen in my whole life.
Stunning.
Very. And the boys were just saying that they'd like to have their bar mitzvahs here.
As soon as we walked in here, we just thought it was amazing. Just all the shining gold, and it just looks like such an elegant shawl.
The reason we've put this stone right at the beginning of the exhibition is it's the only inscribed tombstone that survives. So it stands as a symbol of the random chance of survival, not just for people, but for all aspects of Jewish culture.
That side of it as well. So come to the main exhibition.
Where we have walked from Kazimierz, the area we are here is called Podgórze, right? My Polish accent is lousy, okay? But it is Podgórze. This is the area of the ghettos during World War II.
I was born here in 1922. Our apartment was here, part of the first floor where the balcony is. It's a house that belonged to my grandfather, and on the first floor we were sharing the first floor, two sort of separate apartments, but with a connection. You could open the door. This door actually leads to another room of my grandparents, and then was our apartment.
And we just went upstairs. It was the first time that he's actually been inside the room since the war. He's always come back but never actually gone inside, and it was a really amazing experience to be here with him and be able to walk inside with him. Will be forever embedded with me.
It was a frantic life. Nothing remained the same. From minute to minute, there was no peace.
A few months later, while he was working in Schindler's factory making grenades, Moshe Rosenberg, exhausted by the night shift and drained by the intense heat of the machines, sat down for a moment.
She never spoke about the pain, the suffering, the trauma, the blood, the nightmares. She never spoke about the Holocaust. But can you blame her? Brutally removed from everyday existence, plunged into a world with no rules. All that was familiar had just disappeared where values ceased to exist. She never spoke about the Holocaust.
There were those who smuggled messages, who smuggled dynamite inside bread loaves, inside matchboxes, inside corpses.
Trucks were standing, ready to go. The loudspeakers played children's song. We saw how they led the children from the clubhouse towards the trucks. A silence of bereavement settled over the camp.
It was here at Plaszów that my Zeta was shot into a mass grave by Ukrainian soldiers. The pit was overflowing with corpses, and he pretended to be dead in order to save his life and only crawled out of the pit after the soldiers had departed. In the year 1943, he tragically lost his mother here at this camp, and at that moment, he was entirely alone in the harsh and bitter world.
Papa turned 85 this year, and for him and Grandma, this trip is no ways physically or emotionally easy. I understand his need to come, for he, like many survivors, have a strong and overwhelming need to make sure this dark chapter in Jewish history is never forgotten or denied.
We were standing in rows of whatever, hard for me to describe you details. And he was walking through and pointing his finger, you come, and he shot him. Then the next one said, you come, and you shot him. None of us knew whether we will survive this upper class affair.
Plaszow is a very significant to me because this is a place from which I emerged alone. As I was going from car to car calling for my mother, a Gestapo officer hit me over the head with his rifle. I was bleeding from her head, which was very dangerous because it was caused to be shot. I was sent back into the camp and never got a chance to say goodbye to my mother.
I'm not sure if we should cry over 350 years of Jewry that is no longer, or whether we should be able to celebrate because Am Yisrael Chai.
My grandmother and the other women were proud that they had fought back just a little. On the 8th of May 1945, the Russian army liberated my grandmother, and I feel very privileged to say her testimony today.
Judged by religion and colour, we were nothing to them. A waste of God's creation, the Jews, lest we forget.
If it wasn't for my great-grandmother, my great-grandmother's courage to survive, to keep going, to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I wouldn't be here today. Her strength has brought me and many generations to come.
Suddenly, all those places where Jews had lived for hundreds of years, for over 1,000 years, had vanished.
They wore no black kaftans, white socks, peaked caps, dark side locks that whirled. Neither white nor dark beards shook to the tune's rhythm. Some danced vigorously, letting tears flow. Others questioned their rights to dance. I grieved.
פרח מלא יופי, בדרך את פוסעת, לומדת צעד צעד, את לא לבד. כי שיר קטן אכתוב לך, בו מלאך שמח, שר את שיר החופש, כולו שלך. הנה את איתי, לוחשת לי בשמי, קולך חוטף אותי. או ילדתי, הנה את איתי. או ילדתי, הנה את איתי. או ילדתי.
פרח מלא יופי, בדרך את פוסעת, לומדת צעד צעד, את לא לבד. כי שיר קטן אכתוב לך, בו מלאך שמח, שר את שיר החופש.
Her and her family spent 4 years living in an average-sized bedroom with 25 other people. They had nothing in this room. No toilets, no sinks, no beds, nothing. My nana got very sick with typhoid. She says all they ate was potato skins and polenta. Her main memory of the concentration camp was going to bed in the winter and waking up in the summer.
I am fortunate enough not to have had any immediate family members suffer in the Holocaust, so I decided to find someone, a Holocaust survivor, and give a testimony on their behalf. Hanke came back to Poland in 1944 as a member of the Polish army. Upon her return, her unit was sent to Majdanek, where she saw horrific things.
The trip to Belzec on the last day was very different to that of Majdanek because at Belzec there's nothing left except a beautiful memorial that's been erected there. In Majdanek everything is still there and it looks pretty operational even.
And in Belzets, it's quite the contrary. And basically it just forces you to use imagination. That's what it does.
The memorial was amazing because I didn't think that it would affect me as much as a place like Majdanek where everything is basically intact. But it did because for me, I imagined all the rocks there symbolising a life and a person, and there were millions of rocks.
And we went on a day where the last day it was stormy and it was rainy, and I thought that was such a great way to reflect on the place we were at. We were cold and we were miserable, and it was it just fitted in so greatly with the place where we were at, where nothing is left, but so many people were murdered there. And the memorial there is magnificent. It's like thousands of stones, rocks, just like on a slant, and you walk through the middle of them and you get to like a memorial at the end with names and with candles.
Haben sie verpflanzt die Sonne, grünen sie zum Blau. Sphären wegen super nah zu, es wird kein Weg zurück. Hier ist der Tag.
Normaal die brachten we tegen, we jou niet mag tegen. Maar ik gewoon kijk dat weet Israël. Сказал, בזמן קרוב יגלו משלם ומאפיה ששבים עליי כמו כל ישראל וגנון. אמן.
Haben reges euch die Jammer, habend wie es eure zusammen, nur zu unser Pein, kein bisschen Schein, kein bisschen Schein.
Each name has a face, each face has a family, and each family has a history.
Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by the ones we love.
Yesterday would open the wagons, yelling, "Lost! Get out!"
My mind's eye delusional. I am comfortably not. My frostbitten mind, icy cold veins.
He has, however, realised that it is important to tell his story to as many people as possible to ensure that this horrifying event never happens again.
We only know pain secondary to its truth. We only know hunger secondary to those who starved.
And I will light a candle for her at the memorial and say Kaddish in memory of her mother Salah and her brother Joseph.
And I will light a candle on his behalf for those members of his family that perished.
We went on buses, we had our laughs. We walked together, we cried together. But you are going from darkness to light. You're going to Israel. Enjoy. God bless you.
As we're in that room, I sat down on the ground and I just kind of put my head in my lap and I just thought about everything we'd been through in Poland and, you know, what I've taken away from it. And then we started singing the Hatikva, and that just made me think about, you know, where we were going, and especially that we are still here and that we are strong and that, you know, it never will happen again.
And then Frady comes into the middle of the room and she starts singing the song that my Zeta told me his mum used to sing to him in the ghetto. So, like, I completely broke down. I couldn't, like, it was just an amazing experience to be there. And then we all sang Hatikva. And that will definitely be for me for the rest of my life because it's an experience I can't forget. We're here, we're proud, we're about to go to Israel, and yet our family's history, our Jewish history, will always be in our hearts for as long as we live.
It was so powerful to be in the dark and kind of in that like metaphorical dark that all our brothers and our sisters were in, and I don't know, the weight of it just kind of sat on my shoulders right then and there, and we came out of our Poland experience even though so many other people didn't.
got soul tonight. We got soul, shake and we provide. I want to take your own. So step from side to side now. So honeys, move your hips from left to right now. Fellas gotta get loose, keep it tight now. Well, alright, well, alright.
History of Apple was at the beginning talking about the first one.
This is amazing. We got soul tonight. We got soul, shake and we provide. So step from side to side now. Eyes move your hips from left to right. Gotta get loose to keep it tight. Well, alright. Ease up, free.
Growing up on the farms, you learn how to share. See that? It's not quite right, but you've got a little bit of bird food. Don't worry. You don't want to go near it. You've got to put them when they're at their peak. Beautiful, mate.
Israel is such an important part of the trip. I think it's where they get time to reflect about what's happened to them in Poland, and they can take their experiences in Poland forward with them to Israel. And I think they actually stop and think about it when we're at Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is very, very powerful. And at Yad Vashem, the students have time to go through, spend time looking at the exhibits and putting together the pieces or the questions that they may have had when they were in Poland.
Look at this cattle car. This cattle car about
Yad Vashem is very meaningful, but it is very different to the Poland experience because Yad Vashem is a museum where you're seeing these pictures, whereas going to Poland, we saw it in reality. So it was very different. But each time you go to Yad Vashem, you learn something new, you read something new, and it's just the way it's been done out, the setup, everything just grips you and makes it all the more.
The top middle photo, this is the photo of the factory that I used to work. The guy in the back there with the white shirt, he was the guy that I told you the story, that 2 days before the end of the war, he gave up, he said, I don't want to live anymore.
הוא יכבול אותי ויחקור אותי ויפליל ויכה בי מכות יבשות. הוא יכבול אותי ויחקור אותי ויפליל ויכה בי מכות יבשות.
That is one of the Tim Meltzer boys and their mother.
But we want them to learn about what's going on current events-wise in Israel, politically what's happening in Israel. And in order to give them an understanding and awareness of that, we make sure that they meet people to see what the situation is about. For example, Mark Regev.
The whole idea is you always must investigate, you always must find out what went wrong. Because mistakes happen, even in the most successful wars. Any of you read books about 67 or 73? Wars that Israel won, wars that, were a part of our national history. Terrible mistakes happen.
This memorial is a memorial for those who died fighting the battle of the old city of Jerusalem in the Independence War in 1948. Nissim Gini is 10 years old, and he didn't die because of a bomb that just fell on his house. He died while acting on duty in the service of his country.
I did not have blood red for the wounded. I did not have mourners black for the orphans. I did not have white for the dead faces. I did not have yellow for the burning sand. I had orange for the joy of living. I had green for the blossom and growth.
Take a huge sign, this size, white sign, and write on that sign in black, big black letters, Ani Yehudi, meaning I'm Jewish. Take this sign, walk the street of Tel Aviv, and see what happens.
הוא יכבול אותי ויחקור אותי ויפליל ויכה בי מכות יבשות.
Zuri, this is for you, David Jonathan Solovitz. Is that a picture that someone's got? He fell in 73 with a third tank across the canal with Sharon. He was at university with me for about 4 years. I remember you fondly.
To welcome Australia, Panama, and New Zealand who have joined us tonight. We commemorate Yom HaZikaron for all the brave Israeli soldiers who gave their lives to protect this beautiful country and our people.
Here we stand at Latrun, where the Battle of 1948 was crucial in Israel's struggle for independence. The heroic efforts of the newly created IDF forces in this vicinity created the momentum for opening the ways to convoys full of food, fuel, arms, and other supplies to the besieged city of Jerusalem.
בתקווה שלוחמי החופש והניצחון, הנאמנים והמהודאים, יהיו מונחים לנצח בתוך לבבות עם ישראל.
Brave as lions, tough as tigers, swift as eagles. And they pass, one by one, between two rows of angels, who feed them candy and place flowers around their necks.
During the past number of years, Israel has taken significant steps on the long and precarious path to peace. Yet the dream of peace still seems to elude our grasp. But we must never give up that dream. The vision of the great prophet Isaiah serves as an inspiration for our aspiration for peace.
I light this fourth torch in honor of Israel as a Jewish state. In this, the Jewish homeland, where Judaism has been and will always be a developing and creative culture, we can all find inspiration for our own continuity and our search for expression of a meaningful Jewish existence.
גינונים. קח כמה דקות, תתרווח, זה לא מתאים שאתה עומד כפוף ומכונס. נותן לי הרגשה שמבקר סרטים נכנס צמוד לבר עם פרצוף מנוכר. גם אם תלך אני נשאר, תשתכר, תעשן, תעצום עיניים, או שתגיע כבר מראש עם בחורה או שתיים. תן לי סיבה טובה ללחוץ בשרפת, זה לא משנה שחברה שלך מבועצת ובחשבון הבנק כסף. לא, כל זה לא חשוב, אנחנו מזמינים אתכם לחזור. Crown of glory, years gone by, about 60, burning the jacket in the sanctuary, and I guess try to choke, but they couldn't choke me. When I lie down, I will not fall asleep, and I'm from overseas, yes, they're trying to be free. Erase the demons out of our memory, change your name and your identity, of freedom, the truth, and a dark history. Why is everybody always chasing me? Cut off the roots of your family tree, don't you know? Not the way to be. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from it. Jerusalem, if I forget you.
I'm pleased to see all of you here 1 week after we march between Auschwitz to Birkenau. Today, להבדיל, we march in Yerushalayim.
We've just done the March of the Living in Israel, the actual march, and it's just totally amazing. And we're all awestruck.
Yeah, it rocks! Go Israel!
It was very different to the other
It was just truly a great experience. Like I've never really experienced such a thing before, and just the march was just like the emotions it's just like it's unbelievable. It's surreal.
That's amazing. It was really different to the other time when it was really quiet, and this time it was all
I had my friends Aaron and Phil by my side, and it was just
it was
very spiritual.
It was so nice to have all the other countries with us. Yeah.
It was kind of like a goodbye to everyone, because it was like the last time we would see everyone from the other countries, but at the same time it was a celebration, because like we came here for a reason. We've learnt so much, and like it was just it was a time to reflect but have fun at the same time and embrace the Israeli culture in a party with everyone across the world.
to call upon all of you to recognize and to appreciate the survivors which stay with us here.
What I would like you to do to begin with is turn 180 degrees so you're not facing me and everyone is seeing some other vision of the surroundings. Just turn with your back to me. Turn with your back to me.
But that the deeds of renown that our Kadoshim, our Israeli heroes, and our Australian veterans have performed are those deeds that should stay with us forever.
World War I remains the most costly conflict in terms of deaths and casualties. From a population of fewer than 5 million, 300,000 men enlisted, of which over 60,000 were killed and 156,000 wounded, gassed, or taken prisoner.
Each year we pay homage not only to those original Anzacs, but to all those who have since committed themselves to the service of our countries. Our Anzacs enrich our history. Their hope was for freedom of mankind, and we remember their pride with courage.
Anzac Day is a day for all Australians and New Zealanders, regardless of religion or racial background. It is a day to commemorate bravery and self-sacrifice.
Did you think we'd scorn your sacrifice, find no honour in the dead? When your lives paid our freedom's price, how could we forget? And that's the diggers' legacy, the freedom we hold yet. We can never repay them, and we shall never forget.
Grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
there's always a sense of march in the back of my mind, and it changes the way I do things now and answer things and see things.
It helped me appreciate Judaism and appreciate how important it is to our life and the continuity of it.
It really did change the way I see things in the community and my identity. Going to shul and just the Shabbat meals with our family really, like, they mean something to me now.
I don't think Poland will ever be forgotten, and I don't think it was forgotten while we were in Israel, but perhaps while we were landing especially, and while we were having the time of our lives, just enjoying ourselves, we were able to just put some of those sadder thoughts behind and to see the positiveness and to see the hope for the Jewish people. That maybe people will look at us and say, you ignorant children, you've just left the biggest cemetery that the Jews have, and now you're having fun, you're dancing, you're partying. But it's not like that, because all we were doing is coping with it the way that we cope with it, by living.
It was, I went through the places she went through, and like speaking to both of them after, it was just, it meant a lot more when we spoke about the Holocaust.
It really made me realise how important they are and how important their stories are, and how much responsibility we have to, you know, make sure that their stories are never lost.
And like the whole trip wouldn't be the same without the parts we went to. Like each little aspect that we did, even like the bus rides, even just like the day we spent in Poland on Shabbos, each little place or moment we had in Poland and Israel made up March of the Living, the marches, the locations, the people, just the whole way we did it made March of the Living, and without each part, it wouldn't have been the same.
That the students who go on this journey, it's a kind of pilgrimage through the places of death, feel a special responsibility that they have to personally take it upon themselves to ensure that these things never happen. They have to be at the vanguard, at the forefront, through the memory that they bear of their grandparents' atrocities, of what happened to them, that they have to ensure that these genocides no longer happen in the world today.